Yes, we are live. Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. While I'm saying hi to you, pull this up in my Facebook group because otherwise I never see your comments for some reason through the Facebook live thing. And I think I'll have to refresh while I do that. But I'm so excited to hang for today. I've got a fun. We actually changed our live stream topic for today. I usually plan a couple weeks in advance, and we had something very different scheduled for today that we will absolutely pick back up next week. There I am. So I can see if I have any comments. But Barbie is all over the place, and I actually just went to go see it yesterday, and I thought we needed to have a live stream around that because there is so much goodness in Barbie, both the movie and the strategic storytelling, which was our live stream last week, and the messaging, but really in the marketing as well. So we're going to dive into all of that today, and I cannot wait. Before we do, let's see, a couple updates, give you a run on where I'm at, but also we've got some updates for the call. So first and foremost, if you're live with me, if you join anytime during the live and you say hi, first of all, I'm so happy to have you because I love getting to chat back and forth with all of you who join live. Of course, I love when you watch the replay as well, but we are giving away one copy of my self-study 6 weeks sales course, Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout. It walks you through the mindset and strategy of creating your own sales process. We usually sell it for only $99, so even if you don't win, it is a steal. And a couple months ago, we gave it away for free, but say hi, you will be entered to win. We will give away one copy of that. We always like to give a giveaway because I love having you here live. So that is our announcement for today. And I just got back in town Sunday night. I was in Santa Fe last weekend, popped back in for a day for our masterclass in New York City, and then went upstate. My mom had surgery, so I went home kind of unexpectedly. It was a little last minute. Went home to spend the week with her upstate so I could take care of her. And I wanted to share that before we dive into the masterclass because I was thinking of, when I was going on that trip, just how grateful I am to have a business that both allows me the spaciousness. I have a one-on-one business. I think I was so told that when you have a one-on-one business, you can't have freedom or flexibility. And I feel like I have so much freedom and flexibility. It requires a little planning, but I have so much spaciousness, so much freedom, but I also have the financial freedom and ability to work from wherever. And both being able to see one of my best friends and go to Santa Fe, which was such a personal joy moment, but also getting to go home. I love getting to go upstate, but really being able to be there for my mom and with my mom, it's such a gift. And I think sometimes we talk so much about money milestones and making lots of money in business and the 10K and the 20K and the $1 million years and all of the money things. And I am so here for that. But I think sometimes we forget about why do we even want the money in the first place and what does that money allow us to have? And something that I both really saw when my dad was sick and I got to go home, and just this week in different ways, it's just the freedom for the values and the things that are really important to us as business owners. And I am so grateful to past me for building a business that allows that. And I want to reflect that to all of you because I think sometimes when we're in the middle of the growing phase or sometimes the sticky phase, we can forget those things or just get wrapped around the money or just think it's not worth it. And I don't know, I think I've never done anything better for myself, and I'm so grateful for that. So I hope that helps someone. I hope that is useful, relevant for someone to hear. So that's my little personal update. And again, if you're just joining live now, say hi, let me know you're here. You'll be entered to win that sales course to Sell Out Without. Hey, oh, it's Bree. Hi, Bree. How are you? Nice to see you. So I was talking about being upstate and how grateful I was to be there. All right, y'all. So let's dig into today's topic. I want to know who has seen Barbie, and if there's anyone who has not heard about Barbie. I wrote this if you're on my email list. I wrote this for the opening for just like the prep for the live stream. I have never historically been a Barbie girl. I swear there's a point to this, y'all, because we're going to talk about all the marketing here. But I think it's important to understand I'm coming in today to sing the praises of the Barbie movie and their marketing campaign. And I was someone growing up who, sounds so horrible, I ripped the head off the only Barbie I ever had. I was not a Barbie person. If you've watched the movie, I was more Sasha, the daughter, than Gloria. So I was just definitely not a Barbie person. So when Barbie, the movie first came out, and I saw the marketing, I kind of did a little bit of that eye roll thing where I was like, great, here's going to be a dumb ditzy movie. I was just not all about it. And I think what's really interesting, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is that marketing campaign was so brilliantly done. And I think they did such a great job with that movie, specifically for those people who had objections like me, that I came home from my trip. And the first thing I wanted to do was go see the movie. And my husband got us tickets yesterday. I went in the middle of a work day, and we went in the middle of a work day in Brooklyn. I thought Monday afternoon, we'd have no problem getting seats. It was a sold out theater. And I think that is really, really telling to just so much here that it could take someone who had zero interest in Barbie and kind of eye rolled to want to go and get a ticket to what was a sold out show, and that they had to have 6 of them on a Monday afternoon. And that tells us something about the power, like the power of really strategic storytelling, messaging, and marketing. So we're going to dig into all of that today, but I do want to hear who has seen it. Betty says, I saw it. It was sold out in Watkins Glen too. They had a line out the door. Yeah, it was crazy. I was fascinated. I really thought we could just roll up. We had to get assigned seats. And I was like, it's a Monday. Like, no one's gonna, like, I just did not think it would be that sold out, but sold out. I'm just really, really impressed by that. But also not surprised, they had a $162 million opening weekend. They have surpassed so many of the big blockbuster movies of the summer, and it is not an accident at fucking all. So I think that is the piece we're gonna dive into today. So what we're going to dig into is the truth about sales that I learned from my acting days, and how Barbie schooled us all in the art of having people say, take my money, where all of us have been lining up to go see that movie, even the people like me who are like, I don't know about Barbie. And I have totally been like brought over to the other side. The messaging update Barbie nailed, and I think this is really, really essential for any of us as business owners who want to stay relevant, and why I think the film was really genius for the brand's longevity. We're going to talk about the key lessons you can steal from Barbie's strategic storytelling to become go-to business everybody is talking about, and then the essential takeaways for every business owner and what's behind this movie's success that you can leverage in your own business. So I think a really helpful place to start with is to think about what creates successful marketing for any business. And I think what all of us, and look, I do this too, but I think it's just really easy to think the marketing success starts with the marketing campaign as they start putting things out. And I think what's really important for us to understand, I think Barbie is a really great example of this, is the success in your marketing campaign, the success in your business starts far, 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 far before you ever put out a piece of content, before you ever put out a piece of marketing, before you ever have any PR opportunity. And when we look at Barbie, that film, the reason they had a $162 million opening weekend, that had to start with the inception of their idea. They had to find a gap in the market and create a blue ocean with their story, because otherwise people like me would have zero interest in going to see that film. And it had to start with a group of people who not only found a gap in the market and found a really solid, innovative idea and a different, unique lens and angle, which is why I talk so much about tapping into that unique edge of yours. But that group of people had to be so sold on how great that idea was before they even started filming to be able to get the money for filming and to be able to get people on board to create the marketing in the first place. And I think so often, again, what we want to do as business owners is we want to know our idea is great and the people are going to buy it and that it's going to have the $162 million equivalent in our business, right? We want to know whatever we're going to sell is going to give us that sold out launch, and that is guaranteed. But the way you get the sold out launch, the way you have people lining out the door, isn't by knowing in advance that you have the product that is the sold out launch. It's by first looking at what is the gap in the market, what is the thing no one is saying. Barbie, they could have easily told us a story that has been told 100 times before, and it would have been really, frankly, not that interesting. And we're talking about dolls, for heaven's sake, right? But what they really did is they identified a very big hole in that brand's messaging and in the marketplace. And again, they had to get so sold on that. So I read some articles on this, and Margot Robbie, she had to pitch the studios before they even started filming on getting Greta Gerwig to do the writing for this, because she knew that's who she wanted for the writing project. And she pitched them. She was so sold on this before they even had a script that she told the studios this would be $1 billion movie, box offices. And she's quoted somewhere, she's like, maybe I overpitched it, maybe I oversold it. I don't know, she might be totally on track, but she was so in belief of her idea, of her vision. She had to have that vision and that belief ahead of time. And that is what allowed the movie to be created. And I think it's absolutely epic. But that's also then what gave the marketing team such incredible material to work with. And I think, if I'm just thinking about my acting days, what's really interesting as well is that means everyone on set, the reason that film did so well is they don't know in advance. Like, you're filming for like a year before you ever have any idea, like, our audience is going to like it, or are they going to trash it? Especially with a film like this that honestly is very polarizing, I think, for many people. We have politicians doing 45-minute rants on the film, right? So here you are filming something that you're like, maybe people are going to like this, maybe people are going to hate this. And think about the leadership at the top that needs to be so bought in on, this is our vision, this is how we're doing it. We don't care that this maybe seems weird, we so believe in this. That's what allows a film to carry out, and that's what allows you to market and have those results. And I think this is so analogous to business. And I think it's just such an invitation for all of us to look at, where are we in our businesses hoping to have the evidence from our audience in advance of us first being the leaders and making that clear vision and deciding in advance, this is going to be epic, I'm going to create it, I'm going to be so bought in, I'm going to be so sold in. And that is what's going to teach everybody what's true, as opposed to, let me look to my audience, let me get permission, let me see what everybody wants, and let that be the informative piece. Because I mean, who knows? This is the way the movie turned out. But if Margot Robbie, I think that's how you say her name, but if she and Greta Gerwig had gone and polled everybody and been like, what's the story you want to hear about Barbie? And they went to all of their Barbie fans and all of the people who had grown up loving Barbie, we wouldn't have had the movie we did. We wouldn't have had the marketing campaign we did. And the reason that film did so well is they were really also willing, again, to find that gap in the market and to have a very unique edge and perspective. So I think the other piece here is really looking at, and I think this is what they did so brilliantly, is they were willing to have a clear opinion. They were willing to draw a line in the sand. They were willing to be essentially polarizing. I think we talk about this so much when we talk about what makes for compelling marketing, what makes for a compelling business, what allows a business to stand out. It's why I love Blue Ocean Strategy. If we talk about Blue Ocean Strategy, right, you don't beat the competition by trying to beat the competition. You do it by finding that hole in the market, that unique edge of yours. And so when we look at the script and the message that Greta Gerwig and her partner wrote, is it Noah Baumbach, I think is his name. But when we look at their script and we take a look at the message there, they really were willing to take a look at, how do we take a narrative and flip it on its head? How do we, instead of, it makes me think of the Ford quote. What's the Ford quote? If I'd asked my people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? They didn't ask their people what they wanted. If they had asked Barbie people what they wanted, we would have had a rom-com about Barbie and Ken, I'm sure, right? We would have just had like a love story of Barbie and all of the things great about Barbie and all of the wonderful, like, Barbie and Ken. And we had a very, I don't want to ruin anything for people who haven't seen it, but I think this is all pretty much in the marketing. What they did is they really looked at, how do we not just go to our Barbie fans? How do we really address the narrative and what is in front of us? One of the articles I read about Margot Robbie, she said, we know there are people who don't just dislike Barbie, they absolutely hate Barbie. And so instead of avoiding that, and instead of just seeing, how do we just kind of try to be vanilla and try to please everyone, how do we really take this and create something compelling? How do we find that hole in the market, flip the story on its head? How do we be willing to maybe be disliked? How do we have enough of an opinion so that we can be polarizing? Because great marketing, great storytelling, great brands are polarizing, right? I use this example all the time, but when we think about a magnet that's really, really strong and that attracts people, when we think about marketing, a brand that attracts people and creates so much buzz like Barbie, a magnet has both a north and a south. It is both attracting and repelling, right? So the more attracting you are, the more you have to also be repelling. And I think that is what this film did. And the marketing campaign did so well. Instead of looking to, how do we please people? How do we give people exactly what they think they want? How do we think outside the box? How do we find that hole in the market? How can we be really willing to speak to the things other people aren't willing to? How can we be so willing to know that we're going to be polarizing, that people are not going to like this, but that is the only way we're also going to be so attracting to everyone else? And how do we get so bought in on that before we've even started filming, so that we can sell people on giving us money? And I think that is how this film schooled all of us in business, in marketing, in sales, in storytelling. And I think if we can all take this and apply this to our businesses, it'd just be so fascinating to notice where those opportunities lie. Betty says, hold the vision, trust the process. Yes, 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 yes. I love that. This is why entrepreneurship ain't easy. You have to carve a path. Yeah, it's exactly the truth, and I think it's just so. I think it's such a nice reminder because I think for all of us, and for everyone watching now on the replay, I think maybe this can be a little permission giving. I read an article about Margot Robbie, and she flat out says it was terrifying. I was so scared going to the studios, bringing this out there. I was worried they were going to say no to me. And I say that because I think what you said, Betty, I think that's just so perfect. I think it's just, and I'm saying Betty because that's your name on the thing there, Brie. But I think it's just so helpful to remember that, yeah, that is what is both beautiful and magical about entrepreneurship, but that's also what can be scary, is that you are carving a path, you are creating something out of nothing. You are often, if we're thinking about what leadership is, leadership means going before others. It means deciding on something, trusting in it before there's evidence and proof. And that is both so exhilarating, and that is where the magic in business is created in marketing. And it's also terrifying. But I think what's helpful to normalize is here we have someone like Margot Robbie who is, I mean, I love this because I think it's very easy to look at her and think she's beautiful and she's talented and that's why she got this role. And when we peel back the layers, we see, no, she's a smart as fuck businesswoman who's a producer, who produced this film, was smart about how to get this film produced, who's ballsy as fuck and wrote herself into this, or basically cast herself into this film, who just also happens to be talented. But when we take a look at that, I think it's so helpful it's so easy, I think, to look at someone who has a lot of success, to see a movie that has $162 million opening, to see a business that is making millions of dollars, to see that entrepreneur you look up to who has a 200K launch, and to think, well, it's easy for them. And it's easy for them because of insert all of the reasons, or it's easy for them because they knew in advance that was going to happen. And I think this is such a great example of seeing she's still human. She literally said it was terrifying. If anything, the stakes are higher when you're Margot Robbie. The stakes are higher when you're talking about a film that's going to have about $150 million production budget and $125 to $150 million marketing budget. And you're putting your name out there and you have that much attached to your name. If anything, the stakes are higher, and I think that is just helpful to see. The same for the entrepreneurs any of you look up to. I think the story, the narrative that can hold so many of you back but it's easier for them because they don't feel this way. They don't go through this. And I think it's just helpful to see, no, if you're a human and you have a human brain, unless you're a sociopath, you're going to have fear. It is normal to have some fear, and knowing that's normal, and then also knowing, but the path to success is not, how do I try to wait until I don't have fear? How do I try to get rid of the fear? It's actually, how do I know this is normal and believe in my vision so much that I'm willing to fight for it until it happens? That's like the secret magic sauce for business and for marketing. I'm just seeing comments. Okay. So I think that is the first lesson there. If we didn't learn anything else from the movie, I think that is just it's like business and sales 101. You have to be so sold, so bought in on what you are doing, more so than everyone you're selling to, right? You have to be bought into that vision, or it's never going to come to fruition. I always think about this with sales conversations. As the person who's marketing and selling, you have to have more confidence in what you're selling than the person you're selling to. And I think, again, where we just get it so backwards sometimes is we're hoping to get our confidence from our audience. We're hoping that we have a sales call with someone and that they're going to make us finally feel good enough about our work, or we're hoping that if we have an idea, our audience will tell us that it's right and that that's what's going to give us the confidence. And it's really so much in reverse. And I think the more we can keep coming back to that piece and seeing that's the nucleus, that's the core of your marketing, of your sales, of your success, the more permission you can give yourself, the more freedom you can give yourself. And that, just remembering, everyone has the fear come up. It's not like this was a guaranteed success, but this was a guaranteed success because that belief was so solid there from the start. Okay, I'm just seeing if there was any notes I wanted to share there. I think those are all the pieces there. So let's talk a little bit about the storytelling, because we talked about that so much in last week's masterclass, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of those key takeaways. But in terms of the storytelling and the strategic storytelling in particular, I think what's really interesting here, and we talked again about this in last week's masterclass, when we look at what allows a product to sell? What allows a brand to sell? What overall sells? We know it's stories over facts, right? It's Marie Forleo that says story sells, facts tell. And if we take a look at the film itself, and if we take a look at the marketing campaign itself, I think it's really interesting because I think so often we think it's the literal story that sells us. And I do think their story was genius, but I think they did two really genius things with their strategic storytelling. I think the first thing that we want to remember, and this is what we talked about in last week's masterclass, is it's not only the story, it's the character development. And as humans, we are so wired to connect. And I think what was potentially challenging with a story like Barbie and with a marketing campaign for a movie like Barbie, aside from all the haters, previous hater over here, right? Aside from all the haters and having to combat that and having to really strategically essentially speak to and head those objections head on, I think it's understanding that you have a story about two plastic dolls. And that is a very challenging story to tell because we, again, as humans, are wired to connect. And what compels us to pay attention to a story, yes, it's the storyline, but every story has been told before. It's the characters, and if we don't care about the characters and we aren't bought into the characters, we don't give two fucks about anything, right? The message that was so powerfully told in Barbie, if that had been told just through facts, we wouldn't be paying attention the same way. If you watch any rom-com, right, you can watch 10 different rom-coms, and half of them you're not going to give any shits about, but you're going to care about a couple, but that's because you really care about the characters and what happens to them. And I think what Greta Gerwig, what they did really, really well with this film, and I think that translated to their marketing, is, and I think this is what the brand overall has done historically with Barbie, like them or hate them. I think the film did a nice job of showing that history, and I think this is without giving anything away for those of you who haven't seen it yet. But I think what they did a really great job with, and I think this is something we can all be thinking about in our strategic storytelling and our branding and our messaging, is they've really humanized plastic figures, and they've really made us care in that film about what happens to a doll. I mean, that's actually kind of mind-blowing if you think about it. It's a fucking plastic doll. I mean, that's what it is in the movie. And yet there are people who are crying in the film. There are people, like, we are just we so relate to this doll, and we so relate to the journey that she goes on, and we so relate in many different ways. They've made her so human. In fact, well, I won't give anything away, but I think this is hard to talk about without giving the film away. But I think that's just something we all want to remember in terms of, yes, stories do sell in your marketing. When you're thinking about content, absolutely stories sell. And definitely go watch the masterclass on this. But remembering what are the components that sell and what are the components that create your brand and that create a brand narrative and that allow people to connect to you and your work as opposed to someone else who honestly is probably telling a somewhat similar storyline. The difference is that character development. The difference is finding ways to make people care so much about what happens to those characters, right? And that's how you stand out as a brand. That's how this brand stands out. That's why we were all glued to the screen. That's why I'm doing a freaking live stream over about a movie, because it was so brilliantly done. And I think it is actually a more challenging story. And I think in some ways a more challenging story to have us connect into because it is a brand that has so much brand awareness. I think we have so many preconceived narratives and notions around it. And I think that is pretty compelling for us to see their ability there. I'm just seeing, okay. Betty says, Kim, is this the normal way for an actor to get a role? This was new to me to hear Margot Robbie's story. It's really inspiring. If that's kind of a new way of getting a role, and it's sort of a new way of going about it. Reminds me of the author Brandon Sanderson and how he broke that Kickstarter campaign record. It is and it isn't a normal way. I think this is such a great question. Absolutely. I remember when I was acting, like one of the things they would always tell us is like the best way to break out is basically to create your own work. And they're always encouraging actors to like put on their own plays, create their own films. I have quite a few friends who like wrote and produced their own films to cast yourself in your own movie. It is absolutely, and I mean, hopefully this will change more over time. But I think particularly as a female in the industry, I think it is a really great way to be able to take control over your career. I think so much about that industry, like it is really running a business, and I think what Margot Robbie is a great representation of is she's not there's anything wrong with just being an actress, but she's an actress and a businesswoman, and I think that's what we're seeing there. And I think it's just the smart way to go. And there's, if you look at a lot of, I think Adam Sandler is a probably a good example, just people who have created their careers because they're also business people and cast themselves in. So it's both normal and not normal. There's still tons, I mean, I'd say the majority of people in projects are still cast the normal way by auditions, but this is definitely the best way to give yourself the lead of a movie like that. Probably also the most ballsy. Betty says he wrote books during COVID for his wife, not for his publisher, just for himself, and they were good, and he wanted to share them with the world, so he started Kickstarter. Oh, I remember you telling me this Kickstarter campaign to share them. Their goal was to self-fund with $1 million as the goal, but they made $40 million, broke all records. Also a new way of marketing the publishing industry. Betty says super interesting. Sure, that makes sense. Adam Sandler's a great example. I think what you're saying too, and I think is just so helpful for everyone to hear, and such a good reminder whether y'all are interested in being in a film or not. I think the key piece here is they were good, what you're saying here, and he wrote them just for himself. He wrote them for his wife. He wrote what he wanted to write, and I think that's the other piece with the strategic storytelling, what we saw in this film, and I think this is a piece sometimes in our space that for all of y'all, as you're like looking at your messaging, as you're looking at your work, most of us get into this space because we love the work. We are passionate about the work. We have a message. We have a mission. We have something we want to do. And I think the further we get into it, it's very easy to lose sight of that, to start like, well, this person wants me to do it this way, and this person wants me to do it this way. And things get watered down. I think we see that in Hollywood all of the time. There's so much watered down work because it's gotten too many people's hands and opinions and just so many things in it. And I think what we're seeing with Barbie and what we're seeing here with the example you gave, and I think what we see in our space a lot is sometimes the power is remembering why you're doing the work in the first place, getting your eyes back on your own paper, getting back in your own lane, creating because that's what you actually want to create, because you want to add something new and different to the world, and being so bought and sold into that. But then also knowing that means you might have to go around marketing a different way. You might have to be super innovative. You might have to find a different way to bring it to the world because it doesn't fit the traditional mold, but that doesn't mean people don't want it. I love that example, and I think Barbie's just a great example of that as well. Clearly the studios got behind it, but clearly she also really had to pitch and advocate for that, because I think they really did go against what I'm sure was originally like the traditional mold for storytelling that way. The other piece here with the strategic storytelling, which we keep kind of like circling around to bring it back to that I think is really important for us to touch on, is I think one of the most brilliant things the movie and the marketing did is really taking a look at updating the brand messaging and being willing to do so. I think we talk about this so much with messaging. I think for all of us, we forget that messaging is a living, breathing entity, and businesses that aren't willing to revisit their messaging and that aren't willing to revisit their position in the market, that's where we have the Blockbusters of the world. That's where we have there's so many companies. I think Nokia is one, but just companies who get so locked into this is what worked, and so we're not allowed to change the mold, and that aren't listening to what people are saying, aren't listening to what's going on in the world, and aren't listening to what is really relevant and how the industries change, how the world changes. And I think this is confusing because 5 minutes ago I'm talking about having your eyes on your own paper, doing things your way, listening to your message, listening to your mission. And I think it's easy to conflate that with, so don't ever change your message, don't ever listen to other people. But I think it's a little nuanced in that there's both this way of how do we find a gap in the market? How do we both see like what is missing in the market? What needs to be improved in the market? How do we do things in a way that hasn't been done before? How are we really willing to show up boldly and say something that, people might not like, but other people are going to love because of it? And within that, how are we also really willing to take maybe what we've been saying for 60 years? I think Mattel is 60 years. I think Barbie is a 60-year-old brand. How are we willing to take what we've been saying and doing for 60 years and constantly look at and revisit and to see, nope, this doesn't work, this is wrong, to call ourselves out on it and to update and up-level that? And we see this in the film through I'm not giving anything away here. I think they do some really funny, like poking fun at some of the failures that Barbie had that were like, I mean, we see them and they're a little cringy, but also in terms of the whole messaging for the film itself and for the marketing itself, it is such a brand shift and up level that allows a brand that honestly a lot of us didn't like and don't like for really good reasons. And I think because they were so willing to see that and allow their message to up level and to be more relevant and to also say, hey, we were wrong about some things. And I mean, the film in some ways is, I think, really speaking to that. I think that is one of the most brilliant things that the messaging and the marketing did in this. And I think it's a little counterintuitive because I think so many of us think the way to win over people and to get people to buy from you is like, I never make a mistake, I never do anything wrong, I never change this message, I know everything in advance, I do everything perfectly, and nothing ever changes. And what we're seeing here is the truth is you create epic success by doing what you think is right in the moment, sometimes royally fucking shit up, and being willing to see that, to adapt, to evolve, to up level, and to take some of your bigger fuck ups and to actually control the narrative around it, to actually say, hey, we screwed up, here's how we could do better, to actually say, let us evolve, let us grow. And that, I think, is probably the most genius thing that this film, that the marketing did. And I think it actually, like, I know from some of the articles I read, and this wasn't an accident. Margot Robbie literally, I was saying this earlier, she literally said, we knew going into this that yes, there are people who are Barbie diehards, right? I know my hairdresser, when I went to her, she's like, oh, I still have like all of my Barbies and all of their clothes. But for every Barbie diehard, there's a lot of people who either are indifferent or like me, like who are just like, like, and instead of just saying like, we're just gonna speak to the diehards, they really saw that as the opportunity to lean in, and she literally is quoted in an article saying we had to acknowledge that, and they really chose to acknowledge that. And I think that again is the win. And I think for all of us, I think such an insight into what we think makes great marketing, what we think makes great messaging, what we think creates success, and then looking at, we're all humans talking to other humans, what actually connects, what actually compels people to lean in, what actually compels people to change their mind. And I think this is a marketing campaign that changed a lot of people's minds, because numbers don't lie at the box office, and those sold out theaters do not lie. Let's see. Betty says, this message couldn't be more relevant with it being such a changeable time in how marketing methods are shifting with privacy policies and algorithms, and it being such a weird time in social media. There's still and always opportunities for great marketing, for innovation. It's so true, and I'm going to share this in a little bit when I talk about some of the things like strategically they did in their marketing, but I think one of the things is to what you're saying about with the shifts in algorithms overall and the shifts just with so many things in our space, but they were so smart with their campaign in terms of making things that were super shareable. They created, I mean, I'm literally doing marketing for them right now. Talk about brilliant marketing that is based on word of mouth marketing and creating shareable content and really letting your audience do the marketing for you. And honestly, creating a buzz by picking topics that aren't so vanilla. I think about, I don't want to get too political here, but we have politicians who have done 45-minute rants hating on Barbie. And I just think, gosh, how fascinating is it? Like, how powerful a message is it? It's a movie about plastic dolls, and yet we have politicians who are so affected and needing to defend themselves that they're having rants about it. And really, that is great marketing, because that is just putting Barbie on everyone's brain. It's just making it the topic. So even negative marketing makes it the topic. I think it's just going back to like the power of having being willing to have a compelling message and to speak to those things. I think for so many of us, we're so worried about what people will say. And it's like, well, even that negative marketing, I think really serves them. I just think I think it's genius. I think what's helpful for everyone to know as well is, let's talk about the marketing here a little bit, because otherwise I'm just gonna like geek out on their messaging, because this stuff just makes my brain very, very happy. But let's talk about a couple things here. I think first and foremost, I think what's helpful to know is their marketing campaign costs about as much as the film costs to make. So these are estimations, but the film costs about $150 million to make. There's not like an actual quote on what their marketing and PR was, but it's estimated that it was between $125 and $150, not dollars, $125 to $150 million. I think that's really helpful for all of us to hear that this was not an accident. And so yes, I'm talking about the word of mouth marketing, but there were some real dollars put into marketing. And I say this to a lot of my clients who have written and published books. I think so often, and this is something I learned when I was acting, I think this is so helpful for all of us who are putting out content and who are selling programs and selling work. I think so often the idea in our brain is that the hardest job we have is creating the product, right? The hardest job we have is writing the book. And if you have written a book, all of the praise hands to you. That is no small feat. But I think we think the hardest thing is creating the movie, right? I mean, who knows how long they filmed that for? It cost $150 million. They just had to get it greenlit. They had to get the studio on board. There's so much that goes into creating that movie. So that alone, huge accomplishment. If you're creating a course, right? The hardest thing it feels like is creating that course or program. All of these are huge accomplishments, but what makes any of those a success is the marketing, right? If you create the most brilliant film in the world, if you write the next, it should be the next bestseller, it's going to move everyone to tears book, that book, this is so horrible, it's just the way it is, that book, that film, Barbie is Barbie, and we're talking about it not just because they created an epic film. It's because they created an epic film that they put as much effort, if not more, into marketing after the fact so that we all know about it and go see it. A really brilliant book, it's not enough to have a really brilliant book, right? It's you have to also put as much effort into marketing. And so a lot of times when I'm talking with clients, and I think this can be so helpful in just even deciding what is it you want to sell. I always say to my clients, it's one thing to love what you're creating, but do you love this so much that you're going to love talking about it for at least the next year, if not longer? If you're writing a book, and not to dissuade anyone from writing a book, please, if you want to write a book, write a book. But if you want to write a book to have it published, and your goal is to have it make a certain amount of money, or to get a publishing deal, or to have it, create certain results for you, I think thinking about, do I love this so much that I don't only love the process of creating it, but I love the process and I love the topic so much that I'm willing to talk about it and market it and spend just as much time, effort, energy, resources after it's done to get people to know about it. And I think that is just such a helpful lesson for all of us. This is honestly, when I was acting, I love marketing, love it. I geek out on it. I worked in advertising for years, love it, love the art of it. And when it was my own work, when I was acting, I was not the person I am now. I did not love tooting my own horn. And I would say one of the disservices I did to probably every project I was in is I wasn't willing to put as much effort into marketing the film as I was into preparing for my character and showing up to set and doing the work. And you really need both. And that's what we're seeing here. So not to say that you have to spend as much money, obviously, as Barbie, but I think it's interesting to think about, when you look at your business, is it lopsided? Is there so much effort going into delivery or into creation and maybe not as much into marketing and sales? Where is that hole? And I think for a lot of business owners, especially when you're in more of the startup phase and you're getting fully booked or you're having those first couple of launches, we're looking at 80% of your time or 80% of your resources are probably going to marketing. And I think over time that might shift a little bit, especially as you're sustaining. But I think even as you're sustaining and scaling, I talk with a lot of my clients about this who are further along in business, when we have to be mindful that we don't almost start to coast on our laurels, right? Because the marketing continues to be such an important part of your business sustainability. And I think that is something they really schooled us in with Barbie. To see if there are no comments there. I'm popping back and forth because my screens are really funny here with the Facebook integration here. So again, does not mean you need to spend nearly as much here, but I think it's worth noticing that is part of the reason their marketing campaign works so well. I think the other really important and helpful thing to notice, just from a baseline planning standpoint, is their marketing campaign was so brilliant because they started planning their marketing campaign a year before they even started marketing. And again, for small businesses, I think the beauty of being a small business is we're not dealing with a $150 million marketing campaign. We're not talking about moving hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, a film of this size, it is a small village that you're employing and that you're moving and that you're leading. right? We're even bigger small businesses. We're very nimble, so it's a lot easier for us to market and to do what I did today, which is change my live stream topic up that we had scheduled so that we can be relevant and then we can talk about the things we want to. So this does not mean that everyone here needs to plan a year in advance, and for some of your businesses that won't even make sense. But I think it is a great reminder of the intentionality that goes into strategic marketing and the foresight and the creative thinking. I geek out on the power of creative thinking in your business and being able to have that creative edge so much. And that I think is really what they did here. And then specifically, I think they were just so willing to be creative and to be smart and to let their creativity and their innovation and their willingness to not do what is traditionally done to sell this movie and to create buzz. We talked all about the messaging. I think that's a big part of it, but they did things like they had a billboard that was hot pink and just had the date on it. And I mean, that's ballsy marketing to spend the money, which means you're paying your marketing, probably an advertising agency. I don't actually know what agency did this, but I worked in advertising. Those are expensive campaigns. You're paying creative team, you're paying the art department, you're paying a lot of people to put up a hot pink billboard with just a date, and you're saying, we believe in this so much. We believe in our branding so much. We're creating marketing that's simplistic because we know like that is compelling. And here's what's interesting about that. And I think this is one of the things Barbie did really well. They teased the fuck out of all of us. That campaign, it's like we all know what that is. We're like, what does that mean? What I don't understand. Like tell me more. Why are you not giving me the whole story up front? I mean, talk about some like strategic teasing, and I think that is such a great reminder for all of us. Like, leave them wanting a little bit more in your marketing. Like, oh, so fucking good. They created really shareable content, but they also did a lot of really great experiential marketing. And we all know feelings and experiences are definitely what sell. And I think what they did as well is they just really put in the money and the effort, and they had a brand obviously that worked really well, or that we have a lot of brand recognition around, but they were everywhere. And this is, I think sometimes we don't want to hear this. I think sometimes we want to think like there's some like super secret key to marketing, and of course there are strategies to marketing, but I think there's something to remembering. Sometimes it's also just about being everywhere and top of mind. Part of the reason I went to see Barbie is it literally was everywhere. It's almost like I can't not see it because otherwise I'm not a part of the conversation. Even if it's almost like I need to pay to see, like, do I hate it? Do I like it? Like, I'm willing to pay money for that because it was just so in my face to the degree, and I think I put this in the email for this live. I went to my spin class last week and we had a whole spin class to the Barbie soundtrack. They just were so great about being prolific and about being everywhere. And look, being everywhere, that is part of how we build know, like, and trust. That repetition, how do you think really smart people end up in cults, right? I mean, that sounds horrible, but that just works. And so I think there's something to also demystifying and to making it easier for some of us. Some of this is about just being willing to show up a little bit more, to be in people's face a little bit more, to be willing to, yes, be polarizing, but also just to keep being a part of the conversation. That simply works. Just so you know. Okay, no comments there. So I think remembering that and keeping that part really, really simple for yourself. I think definitely the tease. And then the last couple pieces here that I personally really appreciated. I really think they were willing to be a part of the conversations that are important to all of us, and they were really willing to. I don't think I'm giving away too much of the movie. I want to be very mindful of that. But I think they had a very meta message. I think they went in with a lot of integrity, and I think this movie was created because they had a message they wanted to share. It's kind of what Betty Arca was saying in terms of the other writer who wrote for his wife, who wrote something because this is what he wanted to share. It was that important. I think they were really willing to stay true to that and to be willing to speak to that, and also to treat their audience as smart. I think sometimes we see certain advertising campaigns, and I think we can sometimes dumb down marketing. And I don't think a lot of people in our space do that, but I'm just thinking globally with big big box office brands and brands we all know really well, I think sometimes we treat audiences as idiots, or we almost like want to ignore the conversation that is going on in people's mind, or we have something that's so important to us, but we want to water it down and sell it out, or almost sell ourselves out so that we can be liked. And so I don't, again, think this is ruining any of the film's messaging, but I think part of what was really meta about the film was really learning to trust yourself and to trust your own voice and to be okay with people not liking that. And I think that is really, like, if we were going to summarize anything here, because I think I keep circling back to this point, I think it's just so interesting to see how I think that's what carried through in their marketing. Yes, it was bold. Yes, a lot of this was like ballsy. Some of it was just simple and repetition, but a lot of what they were willing to do was treat their audience as smart, get into the, like, meet us in the conversation we're all having in our heads, right? What are we all doing in our messaging, in our content, in our marketing? We're always trying to get into the heads of our people. Like, what's the conversation they're actually having? Not what's the conversation we want them to have. Not what's the conversation they're saying on the surface. What's the conversation they're actually saying? I think they did a really great job with that. But it kept coming back, I think, to that meta point of, I think they were just really willing to put their money where their mouth was and to allow that to work for them and to trust in the power of what it is to create buzz and what it is to create magnetism, which is you're going to have some people who don't like what you say when you have something that is strong enough for other people to love. Like, if you're creating buzz, by default, there are going to be people who don't like it. And it's sort of like you have to be willing for that to be true to create that buzz, which means you have to stay in your lane in that way and stay true to that. And I think that if we're going to summarize everything here, would be the biggest takeaway I would invite all of us to sit with, where it's like, where is the opportunity for all of us in our businesses to look at, where is the place that I'm holding back? Where is the place I'm playing small? Where is the place I'm not sharing my truth? Where is the place I'm trying to people please? Where is the place in my business that I have this thing I want to say, but I'm like, oh, I know it's going to piss off this person, or oh, I know this person won't like it, or oh, I don't know how they're going to receive it, or what if all these people don't? Where is that spot? Because that is your gold vein. Like that, if you can tap into that, identify that, and be willing to say, of course that's scary. No one likes that. Everybody wants to be liked. We are human beings. We are wired for connection, but we also want to create prolific work. We also want to have that buzz. We also want to have that success. How can you tap on that spot there and use that as your true north for where you get to lean in for marketing, for where you get to lean in for your messaging, for where you get to lean in with your offers? I think that's really the invitation that Barbie gave to all of us and that their marketing campaign. So I clearly fully loved it. And I'm very curious, because I know we'll have a lot of you on the replay for this. I'm very, very curious as you're watching this. Would love to hear your takeaways. I think there's just so many different takeaways for everyone. So if you had different takeaways come up for you around the marketing, around the messaging, if you liked the film, if you hated the film, if you haven't seen the film yet, if you want to see the film, if you liked their marketing, I feel like every onion layer and peeling back here and learning something new about their marketing. So definitely share with all of us so we can have a conversation around this. Don't forget, if you leave a comment, we'll leave this open through the end of today. If you leave a comment, you'll be entered to win a copy of Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout. And if any of you are listening to this and you're like, you know what, I'm hearing you, Kim, and this sounds really great, and there is something on my heart, and there is a message I want to speak to, and I know what it is, or I'm having a hard time tapping into it, but I am freaking out a little bit about what people will think about it, or I'm not really sure how to put it into words that also make sense with my audience, because I know both parts are possible or really important here, or I'm a little bit unclear on how to market this effectively in a way where, yes, maybe it is polarizing, but it's also attracting people, or how to sell in a way that actually brings people through the door so I can have that reoccurring revenue. I don't need to have a $162 million box office opening, though that would be cool too, but I want to have that reoccurring revenue in my business. That is what I support my clients with all day, every day. And both the mindset side of it and just the human trash that can come up for everyone at every level of business, as well as that strategic side of things. I'm really great with helping you tap into your unique edge, helping you think and show up like a CEO, and really digging into that marketing and sales strategy that works for you and has you take up space in a way that is really unique to you. So we are pretty full, but we are opening up an unapologetic words that sells coaching intensive this month. So if that is something you are interested in, you want to learn more about, I will drop a discovery call link for you below. No strings attached, totally pressure free. I'm very, very big on fit, so feel free to book that call if you're curious. And if we are a fit, I would love to work with you. If not, I know some really, really great coaches I would be happy to refer you out to. So for those of you that's calling to, definitely take me up on that. And then y'all, I will be back next week with what topic we originally had scheduled for today. We will dig into that next week. Lots of love. Let's see, there we go.